There are thousands of ways to tell a story. Only one of them is accurate enough to keep it as a tale. The remaining ways would simply turn it into a fairy tale, depending on how much we add to spice up the original story. Our tale today would be one of those which were told in several ways, each tinted with a color, the language, and the origin of the storyteller. The morale, the results, and even the events told get changed all the time to match the agenda of whoever is telling the tale and the pleasure of who listens, or rather watches. Our tale today would be about a temple, the only of its kind, for it's the only temple that marks the Persian presence in Egypt, Hibis Temple. In the days of its construction, the temple occupied a dominant location in the middle of the old city of Hibit, just to the north of the present city of Al-Kharga. Only a few monuments still remain of this old city. The location of the present temple is most likely a holy site of previous temples that may date back to the Old and Middle Kingdoms of Egypt. Work in the present temple started during the 26th dynasty, dating back to 672 BC to 525 BC. King Darius I expanded the earlier Said period temple, renewing the inscriptions and adding a decorated gateway. Additional structures were added to the temple during the reigns of Achoris, Nectanebo I and Nectanebo II. During the Ptolemaic dynasty, Ptolemy II Philadelphus built the Great Gateway. I believe that very few of us might have missed Zack Snyder's epic movie, 300, which told in a very passionate way the story of 300 legendary Spartan soldiers and their heroic king, Leonidas. We all watched in astonishment how Leonidas was so courageous and how he was slain in his desperate battle, Thermopylae, against Xerxes, the Persian ferocious king and his vicious army. With the aid of lots of betrayals by the Spartan Senate, the Ephros, Ephialtes, the frantic, deformed, and defamed Spartan, and the good-looking, good-spoken Senator Theron. Watching this movie and reading few history books, I found that many of the events told were copied from earlier events that took place, not on the shores of the Mediterranean, but on Egyptian soil. Our story today is about how Persians invaded Egypt, one king after another, thinking each time their rule in Egypt has straightened out, just to find another Egyptian king coming out against them, fighting back to retain Egypt's dignity as an independent state. Betrayals by Phanes, a Greek defamed deserter who became a soldier in the Egyptian army, was the one who told Cambyses II about the route to Egyptian strongholds, army counts, and locations, made it easy for him to invade Egypt in the year 525 BC. It took Cambyses II 3 years to learn that Egypt was divided into 3 main kingdoms. Lower Egypt, the one he took over after the battles of Pelusium and Memphis, Upper Egypt, which he took over after the Battle of Cush, and finally the Western Desert Kingdom, when his army was finally wiped out by the Egyptian army, and then the legends goes that this army vanished in thin air after a great sandstorm. It was a storm indeed, but not a sandstorm. It was an Egyptian army that erased Cambyses II's army in the Egyptian desert. Remains of an Egyptian temple in Amhida in the Dakhla oasis still bear the inscriptions of the victorious king Pitobastis, who finished the first Persian campaign on Egypt and defamed Cambyses' name forever. A proof of this Egyptian defeat of the Persian army can still be seen in the Bastan inscription, found on a great rock stela on the Petson mountain in the Iranian governorate of Kermanshah. The inscription states that Egypt never stopped revolting against the Persian rule, and that Egypt got independence of this rule after a series of harsh battles. After Cambyses' death, his son Darius I took over and knew he can't just invade Egypt as his late ancestor did. He tried to persuade them. He was not like his predecessor Cambyses II. Thus, he held a truce with the Egyptian kings, by which he stated he will not attack Egypt, in return to have Phoenicia as an outlook for his men on the eastern Mediterranean. And as a token of his goodwill, he renovated and rebuilt the temples and monuments that were destroyed by Cambyses, as well as the redigging of the Senusert III canal connecting the Nile with the Red Sea to ease the trade between Egyptian and Persian provinces peacefully. At this time, Darius I was fighting his raging war against the Greeks to maintain his grip on the Greek and Levant small states. As Darius was busy with his Greek wars, Ariandus, a Persian commander, declared a war against Egypt at 514 BC. But the Egyptians overtook him, and once again Darius I had to apologize to the Egyptians, enough to execute his own commander Ariandus before their eyes. The Egyptians learned their lesson and allied with the Greeks against the Persians, for they understood that Egypt was next on Darius's plate after he finishes his Greek wars. At 486 BC, Darius I died, to be followed by his son Xerxes, who was even more vicious than Cambyses. His first battle was against the Spartans. Yes, Thermopylae, the 300 movie tale. At 485 BC, Xerxes invaded Egypt, killing and burning everything in his way, even after he lost all his fleet in a marine battle named Salamis against the Greek fleet in 480 BC. Once again, Zack Snyder uses the same tale to make his next movie, 300: The Rise of an Empire, telling the story of Themistocles, the Greek commander who took over the Persian fleet in the Salamis battle. Between 485 and 460 BC, Persian grip on Egypt was so strong, but this would never mean that the Egyptians accepted the Persian rule. They revolted against them many times, and the battles with the Egyptian local kings kept going on till they were finally able to expel the Persians off the Egyptian soil in the year 404 BC at the hands of Amun-Hur II. Back to our temple, which is falsely said to be from the Persian period. The temple was built in honor of the Theban triad, which consists of Amun, Mut, and Khunsu. The construction work started under the rule of Apries and then Ahmoses II. The temple starts from the east with the sacred lake and the ports. Then there is the Roman gate that dates back to the Roman emperor Galba, who built this gate in 69 CE. Afterwards, there is the Ram's passageway that leads to the major gate of the temple. And after that, there is the sanctum of the temple with its remarkable, unique inscriptions. The construction follows the plan of the traditional Egyptian temple. The hypo-style hall of the Hibis temple was also decorated in an unusual fashion. The walls were laid out as an enormous papyrus decorated with vignettes and containing a series of hymns to Amun. Several passages of these hymns are known from earlier texts, such as the magical Haris papyrus and the hymn to the 10 Bas of Amun from the edifice of the Harko at Karnak, which is one of the first examples of a hymn reproduced on a wall painting, a common feature in the later Ptolemaic era temples. The temple, as well as the fortress it was built within, dominates the desert road from the south by sitting on a volcanic outcropping. During ancient times, the temple was surrounded by a lake that has now disappeared. The temple was begun by Apries in 588 BC, during the 26th dynasty, so the foundation may date somewhat earlier. It was completed by the Persian Darius I in 522 BC. Later, Nectanebo II built the colonnade, and other additions were made during the Ptolemaic period. And during the 4th century, a church was also added along the north side of the portico. There are many aspects of the temple's plan, construction, and decorations that are unusual. The temple was built from the speckled local limestone in an east-west orientation. A sphinx-lined approach leads through a series of gateways, beginning with one built by the Romans. After the death of Nero in Rome 68 AD, 4 emperors ruled during 1 year. During the reign of one of them, Galba, a portal was added to the Hibis temple complex, nearer to the landing stage on the lake. Inscriptions on this gate contributed greatly to our understanding of Roman rule. Created in 69 AD, they provide information on various topics, including taxation, the court system, inheritance, and the rights of women. Hibis temple, which is falsely said to be from the Persian period. The temple was only renovated by Darius I, who put his images making offerings to Egyptian deities in several scenes during this renovation, and mainly on one of the gates added to the temple. The rest of the temple tell the rest of the true story of the place. It was built, remained, and has always been the Temple of Amun at Hibis, Al-Kharga.